The flashing red and blue lights cut through the darkness, painting the street in an eerie glow. Dr. Marcus Carter exhaled slowly, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. Another long shift at the hospital had left him exhausted. 12 hours of stitching wounds, stabilizing trauma patients, making split-second decisions that meant life or death. And now this. The cop's voice barked through the driver's side window, sharp and impatient. License and registration. Now. Marcus reached for his wallet, movements deliberate. He knew the drill. He'd been here before, but tonight felt different. The officer's flashlight beam burned into his eyes, refusing to let him look away. "You were speeding," the cop said, though Marcus knew he hadn't been. The empty stretch of road had no witnesses, no cameras, just him, this stranger in uniform and the weight of a history he couldn't shake. Then came the words that turned his blood cold. "You match a description." A beat of silence. Marcus didn't have to ask what description. He knew. Black, male, suspicious. The officer's hand hovered near his holster just in case. Just in case of what? Marcus was a doctor. He saved lives, but right now none of that mattered. All that mattered was the badge, the gun, and the unspoken rule that some people were guilty until proven innocent. And the worst part, this was only the beginning. The officer's knuckles rapped sharply against the window. "Step out of the car, keep your hands where I can see them." Marcus unclipped his seatbelt with deliberate slowness, the click echoing in the tense silence. As he opened the door, the cold night air hit his face like a warning. Officer Riggs took a half step back, his posture rigid, fingers twitching near his belt. "You were doing 15 over," he stated, though the words sounded rehearsed. Marcus kept his voice steady. "With all due respect, officer, I was following the speed limit." He gestured to his GPS still glowing on the dashboard, 35 mph in a 35 zone. Riggs didn't glance at it. Instead, his flashlight beam crawled over Marcus's clothes, the wrinkled scrubs, the hospital ID badge clipped to his waistband. "Where you coming from in such a hurry?" The question was an accusation. "County General. I'm an ER surgeon." Marcus reached slowly for his ID, but Riggs stiffened. "Hands on the hood." The sudden bark made Marcus flinch. The cruiser's headlights turned the scene into a grotesque theater. Marcus spread against his own car, the rough metal biting into his palms while Riggs patted him down with unnecessary force. A car passed by, slowing just enough for the driver to stare before accelerating away. Riggs finally stepped back, tossing Marcus's wallet onto the roof. "You people always have an excuse," he muttered, thumbing through the license. "Doctor, my ass." The words hung between them, sour and familiar. Marcus inhaled sharply. He'd been here before, not this exact stretch of road, not this particular cop, but this moment. The moment where facts didn't matter, where his degrees, his oath, his very humanity shriveled under the weight of that one word, "you people." Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Closer now. Backup. Marcus's stomach dropped. Because if one cop didn't believe him, why would two? Marcus watched Officer Riggs' flashlight beam dance across his hospital ID, the plastic card catching the light just enough to make his title clear. Dr. Marcus Carter, Trauma Surgery. For a fleeting second, he saw the cop's eyebrows twit, the barest flicker of doubt. Then it was gone, buried under that familiar mask of authority. "Anyone can print a fake badge," Riggs scoffed, tossing it back through the open car window. It landed in the passenger seat with a quiet slap. "Call the hospital," Marcus said, his voice tighter now. "Ask for Dr. Gupta in the ER. He'll verify." "I don't take orders from suspects." Riggs cut him off, radio crackling as he called in the stop. Static hissed through the night air as dispatch repeated Marcus's license plate. No warrants, no flags, a normal check, a dead end. Marcus exhaled, but the relief died when Riggs leaned in, close enough for Marcus to smell the coffee on his breath. "Funny thing," the cop murmured. "Real doctors don't usually drive beat-up Hondas." The words landed like a punch. Marcus's hands curled into fists at his sides. That car had gotten him through med school, through residency, through nights when he slept in the hospital parking lot between shifts. Now it was just another mark against him. Then headlights. A car pulled up behind the cruiser, brakes squeaking. Marcus tensed, expecting another uniform. Instead, a woman's voice cut through the darkness. "Marcus, oh my God." Sarah Lee, one of the ER nurses, was already out of her car, phone raised. The screen glowed, recording. Riggs whirled, hand flying to his belt. "Ma'am, step back." Sarah didn't flinch. "I know this man," she said, louder now. "He's the surgeon who saved Officer Ramirez's kid last night, the one your whole precinct sent flowers to." A beat of silence. Riggs' jaw worked. Marcus saw the exact moment the pieces connected, the flicker in the cop's eyes as he remembered the internal email, the photos of a grateful police family hugging a black doctor in bloodied scrubs. The same doctor now pressed against a car hood. Riggs took a step back. The radio on his shoulder erupted, "Dispatch, urgent. Unit 47, confirm your location. We have a 1078 officer needs assistance at." 10-4, Riggs interrupted, voice suddenly flat. He didn't meet Marcus's eyes as he unclipped the radio. "False alarm, clearing the stop." The sirens in the distance grew louder, closer, but this time Marcus knew they weren't coming for him. Sarah's phone camera kept recording, its tiny red light cutting through the tension like a laser. Officer Riggs took another step back, his posture stiffening as the reality of the situation settled over him. The backup cruiser screeched to a halt behind them, doors flying open. A Latina officer, Lisa Mendez according to her badge, emerged with her hand resting cautiously on her holster. "Everything under control here," she called out, eyes darting between Marcus, Sarah, and her fellow officer. Riggs opened his mouth, but Sarah spoke first. "Your colleague just racially profiled one of County General's top trauma surgeons," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. "After Marcus here saved one of your own last night." She tilted her phone toward Mendez, the screen displaying the last few minutes of footage. Riggs' sneer, the dismissive toss of Marcus's ID, the way his voice had dripped with contempt when he said "you people." Mendez's expression darkened. She turned to Riggs. "This true?" The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Riggs shifted his weight, suddenly very interested in the pavement. "I had reasonable suspicion." "Bullshit." The word slipped out before Marcus could stop it. Years of composure shattered in an instant. "You had no suspicion, just a badge and a power trip." His voice didn't shake. That surprised him. Mendez exhaled sharply through her nose. "Sir," she said to Marcus, "I'd like to review our dashcam footage before we proceed." The hour was deliberate. She wasn't lumping herself in with Riggs anymore. Sarah stepped closer, still filming. "Proceed with what? An apology? Or are you finally going to admit this was a bogus stop?" The streetlights cast long shadows as the four of them stood there, Marcus with his back against his car, Sarah holding her ground, Riggs shrinking under the weight of his own choices, and Mendez calculating the fallout. In the distance, a second set of sirens wailed. News traveled fast in a small town, especially when it involved cops, a black doctor, and a nurse brave enough to hit record. Mendez made her decision. She unclipped her own bodycam, angling it toward Riggs. "Officer Riggs, would you care to explain why your bodycam appears to be malfunctioning tonight?" The color drained from Riggs' face. That's when Marcus knew this wasn't ending with a warning. This was ending with consequences. And for the first time that night, the flashing lights felt like justice instead of a threat. The police station's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Marcus sat across from Internal Affairs Captain Grayson, the dashcam footage playing on a laptop between them. The video showed what Marcus already knew: no speeding, no erratic driving, just a black man in a Honda being pulled over for existing. Captain Grayson's jaw tightened when Riggs' voice crackled through the speakers. "You people always have an excuse." Sarah's phone footage went viral before Marcus even finished his complaint. By morning, #Dr. Carter was trending. The hospital issued a statement. The mayor scheduled a press conference. But what surprised Marcus most was Officer Mendez. She'd filed her own report before leaving shift that night, documenting Riggs' unprofessional conduct and probable bias. The police union lawyer tried to spin it. Officer Riggs had a clean record before this isolated incident, but the media dug deeper. Turns out Riggs had 12 prior complaints, all buried, all from Black and Latino drivers, all unsubstantiated. Until now. Marcus stared at the TV in the hospital lounge where reporters clustered outside the station. Riggs was being escorted out in plainclothes, suspended pending investigation. Their eyes met through the screen for one frozen second, the cop who thought he'd gotten away with it, and the doctor who proved him wrong. But this wasn't really about Riggs. As Marcus scrolled through hundreds of messages from others who'd endured the same humiliation, he realized the deeper truth. The system had always protected officers like Riggs. The real miracle wasn't that one cop got caught, it was that this time, someone had listened. The chief's resignation made front-page news. The city council fast-tracked bias training. And when Marcus walked back into County General 2 days later, the entire ER staff erupted in applause. Even Officer Ramirez was there, holding his recovered son, living proof that stereotypes could be shattered, one life at a time. Yet as Marcus pulled his Honda into the same stretch of road that night, his hand still tightened on the wheel when headlights appeared behind him. Some wounds ran deeper than policy changes. But when the cruiser passed without slowing, its new bodycam light blinking red, Marcus allowed himself to hope. Maybe next time it would be different. Maybe next time the system would work the way it was supposed to for everyone. The city council chambers buzzed with murmurs as Marcus adjusted the microphone, his notes trembling slightly in his hands. The room was packed, reporters in the back, community leaders in the aisles, and in the front row, Officer Mendez in full uniform, her expression unreadable. The mayor had called this special session after the video went viral, promising real reform. Marcus intended to hold him to it. He began quietly. "I shouldn't be here." A pause. "Not because I don't belong in this room, but because what happened to me shouldn't exist in the first place." The chamber fell silent as he described that night, the flashing lights, the casual cruelty in Riggs' voice, the sinking realization that his education, his career, his humanity meant nothing in that moment. Then Marcus held up his phone, playing the audio so the entire room could hear Riggs sneer. "You people always have an excuse." A collective inhale. "That right there," Marcus continued, "isn't just one bad cop. It's the sound of a system that trains officers to see certain citizens as threats first, people second." Councilwoman Diaz leaned forward. "What would you have us do, Dr. Carter?" Marcus had prepared for this. 3 things, he said, counting them off. First, mandatory racial bias training, not the checkbox kind, the kind where officers hear from people like me. Second, a public database of all misconduct complaints, not just the proven ones. And third, he looked directly at Mendez, officers who report misconduct get promotions, not pushback. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd, but it was Mendez who stood next, her voice steady. "I'll add a fourth," she said. "We audit every traffic stop from the past 5 years. Let's see how many routine checks looked like Dr. Carter's." The room erupted. As Marcus stepped away from the mic, a reporter shouted, "Do you feel vindicated?" He almost laughed. Vindication would mean this never happened. What he felt was resolve. Outside, the evening news crews were already broadcasting the headlines. Local doctor forces police reform. But Marcus's phone buzzed with another notification, a text from Sarah. "Just got 3 GSWs. You up for another late night?" He smiled. Some things, at least, never changed. The real work wasn't in council chambers or viral videos. It was in the quiet moments afterward, showing up, speaking out, stitching the world back together one shift at a time. The camera holds on Marcus's face as he leans forward, the glow of his computer screen reflecting in his tired but determined eyes. "This story didn't end with a viral video or a fired cop," he says quietly, "because stories like this never really end." Behind him, the framed photo of his medical school graduation sits slightly crooked, a subtle reminder of how fragile even hard-won success can be. He picks up his hospital badge, letting it catch the light. I still get stopped. I still get those looks, but now, a small, fierce smile. Now I know what to do with them. The screen splits to show Sarah's viral footage playing on a phone, then widens to reveal Marcus speaking at the council meeting. Your voice matters, your story matters, so tell it, film it, share it. The music swells slightly as text appears. Had a similar experience? Tell us in the comments. Marcus's final words come straight to camera. They're counting on our silence. Let's disappoint them. The screen cuts to black. White text fades in. Subscribe for more stories that matter. In the silence before the end card, there's just the faintest sound. A siren in the distance, fading away. Not a threat this time, just a reminder that the work continues.